Okay, so this should be the fifth video lecture on social stratification. And in this one, I really just want to focus on the different theoretic sociological explanations for social inequality, going back to those three main sociological theories: conflict theory, functional theory, and symbolic interactionism. And each offer a different explanation about why stratification exists. I'm going to start with functional theory. So functional theory, again, is the sort of theory that's common in our culture. And what it argues is that stratification is a function or is a product of people holding different jobs that are more or less critical to society. So the idea is that the people at the top of the triangle are more critical, more important, more necessary for society to run, and therefore they're rewarded with finance, with money, with social status, with power. The argument goes also that the people at the bottom are somehow not worth as much, and their jobs are less critical, less central, and therefore they don't get the same social reward in terms of money and status. And so if you want more money, if you want more status, then you take one of these more critical jobs. It's based on a really important concept that is in fact bolded on your handout here, and that's meritocracy. Meritocracy is based on that root word merit, which means that you earn your social status, you earn your social location. If you're better than other people, if you're more important, you'll move your way up through that social triangle. The assumption is that because the idea is that we live in a meritocracy, that when you're better than others, you'll be rewarded. And again, this moment that we happen to be living in kind of challenges that a little bit. Right now, the most important people in our society are the nurses and the doctors and the grocery store workers and the people that are delivering our goods and services, the UPS drivers. These are not the highest paid workers in our society. The people at the top, the movie stars and the athletes, where are they? Right? They're not contributing to the functioning of society. So the criticism of functional theory is that the people at the top, the highest paid, the highest status, they're not necessarily the most important, nor are they always the people at the bottom. Are the people at the bottom are more important than their relative rank. One of my favorite things that's going about around Facebook right now is that, grocery store workers have been lobbying for a $15 an hour wage, right? Raise the wage campaigns. And now they're like on the front lines. These are some essential employees. And maybe as this thing calms down, maybe there'll be more social status and higher wages for grocery store workers and fast food workers, because clearly we're all dependent on them right now. All right, conflict theory then addresses some of those or tries to explain some of those criticisms of functional theory. And what conflict theory says is that the social structure has nothing to do with your relative contribution, how important you are. It's simply the fact that the people at the top are the ones who make the rules and they want to maintain their social position at the top. And so they write finance policy and labor policy and all of those policies to make sure, or by consequences of their policies, that they stay in those positions of power, right? So they are in the wealthiest positions, they write the rules that are in their own best interest. Something you could be listening to where you hear a lot of conflict theory talk is this $2.2 trillion relief package that just came out of the federal government. And, people are, or at least in my circles, they're commenting about there's billions of dollars going to corporations, but how much is actually going to the people, right? Are they going to the corporations to maintain the wealth of the people on the board, so that the board members and the people that own stock in that corporation remain wealthy? Or are these resources going to the people at the bottom of that social hierarchy that were laid off right? And who's writing this policy? Who's writing this legislation? And who does it benefit? That's always the sociological question. Who wins? Who's benefiting from this? So that's conflict theory. And then I've also made the one assignment where you can see the Forbes richest people. That's fun to watch over time. When I started showing that particular link, the first few years you had 4 of the top 10 Americans were all Waltons. They were all descendants of Sam Walton, who runs Walmart. Some of those people have fallen out of the top 10. Okay, then the last theory is symbolic interactionism, and this is a very different theory. Remember, because symbolic interactionism is the micro level, it's the lower level explanation. And there's some criticism behind symbolic interactionism, but it argues that social class is less about where you're at in a triangle, and social class is more about your way of being, right? That it's social class is stratification is not about the size of your bank account as much as it is about how, remember, because it's about symbols and how people interact in the world, but it's more about how you do social class. That your social class is, and this is really more of a European way of understanding social class, but your social class is your relative rank is defined, it is identified based on how you dress, how you talk, how you interact, the things that you surround yourself with. Now, you would need money to surround yourself by certain things and certain people, but this idea suggests that we create our social class by how we be, right? All right, so some of the things that are suggested or are pointed to from this perspective are things like how we talk, the language that we use, how close we stand to each other. So hopefully you'll follow those links. One of them, there's a couple on here that I think it's this one, and she talks about how she coaches people to interact with a higher class of people, right? The language that people use, the kinds of hobbies we engage in from the symbolic interactionist perspective this is what determines our social class. It's not how much money we have, it's about how we are or how we be, right? The social class is symbolic. Now, if you've had much experience to sort of cross social class lines, you've probably sensed that you go some places and people are just more like your people, or they're more at ease, or you're more comfortable with them. That would sort of hint at the symbolic interactionism stuff. I know that I am much more at ease amongst working class people, amongst people that do the work of the work, union people, what my husband and I call calloused hands people who work with their hands and they work outside, and they come home from work grubby, come home from work dirty. I am more comfortable with those people, with people like that, than I am with people that go to work in a suit and tie every day. My ability to interact, my topics of conversation are different. That's a symbolic interactionist interpretation of social class. So it's fun to often ask people, what does social class mean? And we often come up with a symbolic interactionist perspective on social class. So this concludes the lectures on stratification.